present this to the legislature. That's the appropriate time to make those announcements. I wouldn't try to.
No, I understand that. Compare getting ready for this budget, compared to your first budget. How difficult is this time around for the last year?
Well, it's more difficult because economic conditions are worse. But it's not more difficult than what I've personally experienced over the course of the last 26 years now. Because I've seen up times and down times. I've seen austere budgets, and I've seen budgets that were much easier to be able to fund. So from that standpoint, it's new for me as a governor, but it's not new for me in the budgeting process. As you know, when I was in the Senate, I was on budget and actively involved in creations of budgets, whether I was there for the proposals or not. I was still involved in the actual creations because the legislature actually has to do it. So it's not new, but from the standpoint of being governor, it's different this time than it was 2 years ago.
I think anybody would expect the economic conditions they are right now are going to make some type of major impact. I mean, is that safe?
Yeah, well, the good news for Arkansas is so far we've withstood the national downturn. So far in Arkansas, we've continued to run at least at, if not above, forecast. And we've actually been creating more jobs than we've been losing, although we've lost jobs. We're still creating even more. And for the most part, the jobs that we're creating are even higher paid jobs. So, knock on wood, at this point, we're better off than most of the country. But, having said that, we're not immune from what happens nationally. And based upon a desire on my part to be very cautious and prudent in the budgeting process, we're bracing for the potential national downturn to affect Arkansas next year. And if that occurs, we'll be ready for it because we're going to budget accordingly. Now, if it does not occur, if we continue to buck the trend, and if we're not impacted as much as we're preparing for, then we have a mechanism in Arkansas that we're able, to be able to fund those contingencies or fund those programs at a higher level than an austere budget initially would call for. And that's what we'll do if things turn out to be better.
How lean of a budget do you think lawmakers in the state need to be prepared for? Are people going to be surprised by what they see tomorrow?
Oh, I don't know if they're going to be surprised, but I'm sure there'll be some disappointment with some folks. Are always. The toughest part about this job, Andrew, is always having to tell people no for really good programs. And there are very few programs, there are very few requests that come in that don't have some degree of merit or they wouldn't even get in. And having to say no because you're having to balance the budget. We don't have the luxury of running deficits like the federal government does. And I'm glad we don't. We shouldn't. Nobody should run those kinds of deficits. But it causes me to have to say no more often than I like. So you get some disappointments for people. But we'll live within our means. Arkansas taxpayers are having to cut back and live within their means. The state government has to do the same thing.
Is there any room for income tax cuts and a grocery tax cut?
No, my first priority on tax relief is and always has been grocery tax. If there are any tax cuts, from my standpoint, there'll be further cutting of grocery tax.
Is there sort of a critical point? I mean, you keep hearing about first quarter and second quarter of next year as being the time to be really concerned about it.
Well, we're first of all, we cut about $107 million this year, which covers all the quarters in this fiscal year, which include the first 2 calendar quarters of 2009. But the budgets that we're dealing with fiscal 2010, which will begin July 1st and run through June 30th of 2010.
So it'll be a penny tax cut and grocery tax, right?
You're pretty good, but you're not that good yet, so I'm not going to give you any specific answer.
Okay. Thank you very much.